You are lying in 2 inches of water. The water is cold. It has been cold for 6 days. You stop noticing it on day 3, which your training told you would happen, and which turns out to be worse than noticing it. Because when the cold stops feeling like cold and starts feeling like nothing, you understand that your body has made a decision about priorities, and warmth is no longer one of them. The jungle does not care. That is the first thing Vietnam teaches you. Not the enemy, not the war, the jungle. It has been here for 10,000 years before the French arrived, and it will be here 10,000 years after the last helicopter leaves. And it processes soldiers the way it processes everything else, slowly, completely, without malice. You are 23 years old. You were drafted in 1969. Your lottery number was 47. When they read it on the radio, your mother was in the kitchen and you were in the living room, and she heard it and came to the doorway and looked at you and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. A lottery number of 47 in 1969 meant one thing: you were going. Your unit was the 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile. You arrived in Quy Nhon in March 1970. The soldier who handed you your gear had been in country for 11 months. He looked at you the way men look at things they have already decided are temporary. He said, "Don't make friends the first month. Give it 60 days before you learn anybody's name." You thought he was joking. He was not joking. There were 9 of you, a squad. The Army's doctrinal number for a rifle squad is 9 men. You had 9. In the books, a squad has a squad leader, 2 fire teams, a machine gunner, a grenadier. In the Ia Drang Valley in the wet season of 1970, a squad had whoever was still standing. Your squad leader was Staff Sergeant Raymond Kowalski from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He had been in country for 14 months, which meant he was already past his 12-month rotation date, which meant someone somewhere had decided his particular knowledge of the terrain in Binh Dinh province was worth keeping. He did not discuss this. He discussed the jungle, what it sounded like when it was empty, what it sounded like when it wasn't, how to tell the difference in under 3 seconds. 3 seconds is generous, he said once, during a rest halt. You'll have 2, Martinez, Fontaine, Specialist Cho, who was Korean-American and from Los Angeles, and who spoke no Korean and had to endure, for all 11 months he served, jokes about translation that he had heard so many times he no longer bothered to respond to them. Willis, who was from Mississippi and who was 18 years old and who had lied about his age and who, by the time you knew him well enough to know this, had already been in country for 4 months and had aged past it. Reeves, Pemberton, Kowalski, and you. 9. The operation was a reconnaissance in force. The objective: locate and assess NVA activity in a grid square approximately 40 kilometers northwest of An Khê. The intelligence estimate, sourced from aerial reconnaissance and a HUMINT report of uncertain provenance, indicated possible NVA presence. Possible. That word would later strike you as the most expensive word in the English language. The NVA regiment in that grid square numbered approximately 1,200 men. You did not know this going in. Your battalion S2 did not know this going in. Whether someone higher up the chain knew and did not pass it down, or whether no one knew at all, you have never been able to determine. The after-action report, which you read a copy of in 1983 when you finally requested it through a Veterans Administration inquiry, describes the engagement as contact with a larger-than-anticipated enemy force. Larger than anticipated. 1,200 men versus 9. That is not larger than anticipated. That is a different category of problem entirely. You made contact on the 4th day, 06:14 hours. The jungle went wrong before you could name exactly how. A bird that stopped in the wrong place. A quality of stillness that was too complete. Kowalski's right hand going flat against the air in the signal that meant everyone stops, everyone down, everyone now. You were down before you had consciously decided to go down. That is what training does. It removes the decision and leaves the action. The first burst of fire came from 11 o'clock, then 3 o'clock. Then, after a pause of approximately 4 seconds that felt longer than the 6 days that followed, from directly behind you. 3 directions. That is not ambush, that is encirclement. Kowalski went down in the first 40 seconds. Not killed, hit in the shoulder and the left thigh, functional but grounded. directing fire from behind a tree that was not large enough to fully cover a man of his dimensions, which he appeared to have accepted as a fact he would work around. The firefight lasted, by your later estimate, somewhere between 25 minutes and 2 hours. You have no accurate sense of elapsed time from that morning. The neuroscience of combat compresses and stretches duration in ways that make testimony unreliable. What you know is what you can verify. Ammunition expenditure, wound patterns, position of the sun when the firing stopped. Pemberton was killed in the first exchange. Willis was hit twice and kept shooting until he was hit a third time, at which point he stopped. Cho pulled him behind cover and applied a field dressing and kept applying it after it was no longer serving a medical purpose, because there was nothing else to do, and stopping felt like a kind of abandonment. You do not remember the decision to move. You remember moving. Kowalski was giving orders through gritted teeth that seemed less like commands and more like the sound of a man refusing to stop. Martinez had the radio and was transmitting on the battalion frequency and receiving, as best you could tell, nothing useful in return. The terrain, the distance, the possibility of jamming, some combination of these factors conspiring to turn the radio into an expensive piece of silence. The NVA did not pursue immediately. This, you later understood, was tactical. They did not need to pursue. They knew the terrain. They knew the grid. They could afford to wait. On the third day, Martinez found the signal. The PRC-90, a handheld emergency radio, line of sight range of 2 miles in ideal conditions, less in jungle, had been transmitting on guard frequency, 282.8 MHz, since day 1. Martinez had been cycling through it. On day 3, a voice came back. A Huey, call sign Dustoff 34, working a separate operation 12 kilometers east, had picked up the transmission on a frequency scan. The pilot, CW2 Thomas Ellison from Fort Worth, deviated from his assigned route, burned fuel he did not have for 47 minutes, relayed your position to the battalion TOC and advocated, in terms the after-action report describes as emphatic, for a rescue operation. The rescue was not authorized until the following morning. The reason is something you do not fully understand, and have spent decades not fully understanding. You have read the after-action report. You have read, obtained through a FOIA request in 1991, the communications transcript from the TOC that night. The word feasible was used 4 times in 40 minutes. By people in a building, about whether to send a helicopter for the men in the jungle. Kowalski died that night. Not from the wound, from the combination of blood loss, exposure, and the wet season temperature drop after midnight in the Central Highlands, which can reach 15 degrees Celsius, cold enough for a man already in shock to become something medical. He was conscious until approximately 0200. He gave final instructions about the compass bearing. He told Martinez to stop apologizing for the radio. He said something that you could not hear and that you have, in the years since, decided to leave alone. 3 of you on day 4. Albright had gone silent in a way that was different from his usual silence. The difference between a volume turned down and a volume disconnected entirely. Present, functional, gone from himself in some way you could identify but not name. Cho was the most capable. He had grown up in Compton, navigating systems that required constant threat reading, the tireless calibration of when to be visible and when not to be. The jungle was new. The skill was not. He found the stream on day 5. You drank. You treated the water with iodine tablets from Kowalski's standing order. Carry them on your person, not your pack, because packs get dropped and persons are harder to separate from their equipment. A LOH, an OH-6 Cayuse, found you on day 6 working a grid search. The pilot saw the signal mirror. Angle the mirror to the sun. Use the sighting hole to aim the reflection. Flash short and long pulses toward the aircraft. He circled once to confirm and got on the radio. The extraction took 4 hours to organize. In those 4 hours, the NVA found you again. Albright was killed at 13:47, 19 minutes before the helicopters arrived. He had carried something through 6 days that most men could not have carried, and he set it down at 13:47, and you do not know if that was mercy or its opposite. 2 of you were extracted, you and Cho. The 67th Evacuation Hospital at Quignon. Hypothermia, lacerations, mild infection. The medical report listed acute stress reaction, the 1970 term for what a later era would name differently. Cho had a fragment wound in his left side from day one that he had dressed himself and not mentioned. You asked why. He said, "What would you have done about it?" You had no answer. Of 9 men, 2 survived. 7 names are on the wall. You went once, 1985. You found the panel. You touched each name in the sequence of how they had become real to you, not alphabetical, not chronological. Kowalski, Willis, Reeves, Pemberton, Fontaine, listed as missing in action, which is its own specific grief with no edge to push against. Martinez, who survived the war, died in a car accident in El Paso in 1978. His name is not on the wall because the wall counts combat deaths and does not know what a war continues to do to people after it officially ends. You found Cho in 1991 through a veterans organization. He was in Sacramento, working as an electrician. You said your name and he paused 4 seconds and said, "I figured you'd call eventually." You have spoken on average once every 3 months since. You are in Akron. It is 2024. You are 77 years old. Bad knee from the 2nd month in country. A scar on your right forearm from day 3. A habit your wife noticed within the 1st year of marriage and has accommodated for 51 years. You sit with your back to the wall in restaurants. The water is something you carry, not as trauma, you are past that word, as weather. A condition of the interior, present and livable, requiring certain small adjustments. You think about Kowalski every November. The quiet men are harder to let go. The ones who held everything inside leave a silence that keeps its shape. This is not fiction. The 1st Cavalry Division's operations in Binh Dinh Province are documented in U.S. Army Center of Military History records. The PRC-90's guard frequency of 282.8 MHz is specified in contemporaneous Army field manuals. The 67th Evacuation Hospital at Quy Nhon is in official records and veteran accounts. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial holds 58,281 names at vvmf.org. The Saigon evacuation photograph was taken by UPI's Hubert Van S. on April 29, 1975, at 22 Gia Long Street, not the embassy roof, as widely believed. Lottery number 47 in 1969. You went. Which name stayed with you?